I've got an island property located out here on Island Lake Reservoir in Duluth, Minnesota. Really unique land investment. My name is McLaughlin here at Wilco Land. Rolling out a new property with you here today. This one's a fun one. I'm going to teach you what it looks like on satellite imagery. I'm going to talk about how you can access the property and cover some of those FAQs to help you better understand what we're advertising and selling. Just kicking the video off with a quick disclaimer. This isn't legal advice. It's not real estate advice. You as a buyer ultimately need to conduct your own due diligence at the end of the day. This is from my own experience, my due diligence, and my 10 plus years in the industry. So let's pause in this photo for a minute. In this video, I'm going to get to some satellite imagery to talk to you about what this island is. It's about a quarter acre or so of usable land. It's really a unique area if you know where this area is up on Island Lake Reservoir in Duluth. So there's a public access point right here, and I'll talk about that. And you're just a hop, skip, and a jump, a short boat ride, a short kayak ride over to this island. And what's really cool about this island is that it's got a sandy beach you can pull up to. And so here's the property right here. It actually, is 10 deeded acres. It's my understanding that they opened up a dam at one point and flooded this whole area. And so this property has a section of this island. The other half is owned by a power company, right? So you're never going to get any use on the other side of your island. You're not going to have neighbors. That's basically a utilitarian property to the north of you. But this island specifically is around a quarter acre. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a time lapse on Google Earth to give you an idea of what people are doing or what the previous owners have done on this island. So you can see it's got this sandy beach a lot of times. If we go back to 2010, look at this imagery here. There's a lot more space back in 2015. So it's going to fluctuate from year to year. Every year is going to be a lot different, right? You can see this sandy beach and you can see somebody's pulling up right here. I thought that was pretty cool. Check that out. They've got their pontoon pulled up. You've got your own private sand beach. You're out here boating with your friends and family. You can tell them, hey, I own this. We've got a campfire pit. We've got a charcoal grill out here for lunch. Kind of a cool place to own, right? Maybe you put a storage container out there. Maybe you bring some materials out there during the winter when it all melts or when it's all frozen. Whatever it may be, you got a cool little private campground on Island Lake Reservoir. And I wanted to point that out. Other people are using these lots out here too that they probably own. So again, just kind of measuring the amount of available space. I'll show you what I'm doing. Let's just take a peek right here. I'd say something like that's pretty darn usable. You've got 0.36 acres. Even if you make this smaller, right? You're like I said, you're around a quarter acre, zero point 0.3 acres. Even when the beach is gone, let's say like this, you still have a lot of space. This was obviously a really, really wet year or time of year. Got the wrong tool going here. Let's look at this. Let's see what this is. Like I said, you still have close to that quarter acre of land that we're talking about here. Just kind of measuring this out one more time. Showing you this, the measurement's about zero point 0.2 acres. So you still have, it's going to fluctuate from 0.2, maybe to 0.35, something like that. The main story, the main thing we're advertising here is a fun recreational property where you can leave stuff out on this island. You own this part of the island. And like I said, most seasons you're pulling up your boat on this sandy beach. You're hanging out with family and friends. Like I said, you can keep your grill out there. You can keep a storage container out there, keep all your toys, kayaks, things like that. It would be a really fun space to have. Maybe a couple of tree forts out there or something of that nature. So, talking about that boat launch, it's really close. This is what makes the island pretty attractive is you can head up here on a weekend on a Friday and you can stay the night on the island, right? You've got your own little private camping site. Maybe you even put a dock on your islands, right? These are things that are all possible. Do your due diligence, make sure it's going to work with the county or whatever. But yeah, this is Island Lake public boat launch right here. That's where we got that photo on the listing. I haven't had a photographer out this property, but you can even drop down here on Street Views and see what it looks like all the way at the end of the dock here. This looks like a pretty popular boat launch for the most part. But yeah, this is what it looks like. You're dropping in right there. Beautiful part of the country. Like I said, there's so much you can learn from the comfort of your home. It looks like it kind of abuts right there. Like I said, the history out here is kind of interesting. I think they opened up a dam, and what that did was just see what the area looks like, I guess. They opened up a dam, and what that did was flood a lot of property out here. That's at least my understanding. Maybe there's a different backstory that I have my wires crossed on, but For the most part, the buyer out here, the target audience is looking for a recreational property like this. Great part of the country, beautiful area. If you want to go view the property, simply use these GPS coordinates, right? Plug these GPS coordinates in right here. I like to use Onyx Maps and you can see exactly where you're at. So you're going to launch at this boat launch right here. The distance between the boat launch and the property is going to be roughly 830 yards. We can measure that out. That's not very far. You could even take a kayak or a paddleboard out there. Um, and then again, you've got all this space up here. If I measure this out again, right, we can use different tools. These are all GIS programs that are slightly different in the type of data that they're giving you. Um, this is going to be roughly, another quarter acre, right? So you're working with a recreational property, right? That's our target audience, somebody who wants to spend the weekends out here, who wants their own little private retreat out on Island Lake outside of Duluth, the Island Lake Reservoir. So that's what we're working with. If you're looking for maybe the width, we can talk about that. Let's see how wide this property is, how much space you actually have. Let's take a peek at that with a ruler. From the edge of the property line, down to the beach is basically 15 yards wide or 12 yards wide in this section. If you go all the way down to the water, it's close to 20 yards. So about two first downs. That's a pretty long way. Go out on a football field. 10 yards is a pretty long way to set up a campsite. And then obviously other areas on the property are going to have more room. Let's say we're right here. That's going to be more like 15 yards. So we're going to have a lot, it's going to be different. It could be different from year to year, how much space you have. That's 10 yards right there. You can see what I'm doing. Again, if I go all the way to the water here, that's almost 25 yards that I'm showing you right there. So just want to keep that in mind. I mean, the width of the property, even if I just did the high ground, obviously that's a lot of space. A full football field wide and about, one or two first downs, a full football field long, I should say, and about one to two first downs wide, just depending on where you're at in the property, depending on the year. So I do think the sandy beach is a huge selling point. Obviously, not every year you're going to have that, but looking at the history of the property, most years you do have that. Back in 2021, you didn't. Back in 2020, you didn't. 2017, 2015 was a low year. So it's going to fluctuate from year to year. 2011, big change there. Here's 2010 when we have the pontoon pulled up to the island. 2009, again, the imagery gets a little bit more grainy at that point, doesn't it? 2003. So your years are going to fluctuate. We do have high ground on the property. We measured that. You at least have about 10 yards of high ground on the property. And you've got this own little private retreat out here on Island Lake Reservoir. So these are the tools I'm using to understand this land investment, to tell you what we're selling. Like I said, the reason it's showing is 10 deeded acres. I believe this at one point was all land out here. And I think, like I said, it's a reservoir. I think they opened up a dam or something to create that. But I want to give you a quick bird's eye view and show you guys where this property is located here to end the video. We sell a lot of land like this. If you're interested in something like this, get with our team. We do offer seller financing. We oftentimes work with cash buyers, at discounted rates, things like that. So just get with our team. We can talk to you a little bit more about it. This property is just north of Duluth, up here on Island Lake Reservoir, if you're familiar with that. So like I said, there's campgrounds out here. I don't know how full they're getting during the summer, but this is your own recreational private retreat. Do with it what you want, right? Is a type of message I have. Let's take a look at some more imagery of the area. We can take a peek at the lake up here from this bridge. So you're going to get a pretty good look at what this looks like. Heck, you might even be able to see the island out here, right? So beautiful part of the country. We do a lot of unique and epic land deals like this. I'll be the first to tell you we're one of the few companies that deal with a lot of properties like this, but it gets a lot of interest based on our price points, based on what you can do with it. There's a lot of people looking for recreational property. So if it's something that interests you, just get with us. I'm happy to help you out on this listing. You can give us a call here at 605-299-5553. If you're interested in looking at more listings, just hop on our website. I've got a ton of stuff all over the United States. Our specialty, our niche is land. This is what we focus on. This is what we do, focusing on hopefully unique and epic properties that we're bringing out there on the market. So take a peek. There's more properties in Minnesota. We've got some in Colorado, South Dakota, kind of all over the United States. So thanks for tuning in.